Hello, this is Scott Cook at the South Carolina Department of Consumer Affairs. I'm the Communications Director here. Today we're going to be talking about the 2026 ID theft and scam reports. So basically we've looked at all the identity theft and the scam reports that have come into our office. And this is for the 2025 calendar year. So we're talking about January 1st to December 31st of 2025. We've just kind of got some information on the types of scams that have been reported to us, the contact methods, that those scammers used, and just some information in general about identity theft reports that came into our office. So we're going to be kind of discussing some of the highlights of that information. It's all available on our website as well. As we get started, I always have to tell you, I'm not an attorney. I can't give you legal advice. We're not going to really get into a whole lot of legal discussions today, but again, the presentation is always merely an introduction and overview of the topics that we'll be discussing. Here's a quick little roadmap of kind of what we'll be looking at. I'll give you the quick introduction to South Carolina Department of Consumer Affairs, who we are, how we might be able to help you. Then we'll kind of get into our identity theft numbers from 2025. We'll look at the scam numbers, and then I'll also got some tips for you for keeping your information safe and those free resources that we always like to provide for folks as well. So if this is your first time joining us for one of our webinars, I'll give you a quick introduction to who we are and how we might be able to help you. A lot of folks know us through our complaint process. We accepted about 7,000 complaints last calendar year. So that's a great deal of complaints that our office received. And a lot of times it's voluntary mediation and just kind of getting with folks about what happened, what you would like to have happen, maybe the steps that you've taken with that business and kind of the response that they had with you. And a lot of times just getting that information to a proper person in a company can kind of either help you get, maybe credit refund adjustment, something like that. Or sometimes it's just an explanation of maybe why the situation played out the way it did and what happened, why the business did what they did. And sometimes even that's just useful information for us. Of course, you can report a scam with our office, and we'll talk a good bit more about that through our presentation. And I'd encourage you, even if you didn't fall victim to a scam, you can still report those to us. And it just helps us better understand what's happening across your state and can help us provide other information to other folks, provide, maybe something that we decide we need to do a webinar on or, get a news release out. And that information can kind of help other people avoid becoming a victim themselves of those types of scams that are out there. We also have an identity theft unit that's part of our agency. Basically, they can walk you through that process. If you've become an identity theft victim, if it's either, giving your information out to somebody, maybe it's a security breach, something like that, then kind of walk you through that process, look at what's happened, what's going on with your accounts and those steps that you need to take to, prevent further damage from happening or potentially get money back onto your accounts as well. So they can kind of walk you through that process, and they have a nice little checklist that they can go through depending on the type of identity theft. So it's kind of tailored to what your situation is, and they'll kind of help you figure out who you need to reach out to, kind of minimize further damage in that case. You can also background a business with our agency. So you can go to our website, look to see if, it's an industry that we license. A lot of those industries that we license, we have a lot of different information about them. We'll have those list of, licensees, but we also have, list of maybe some of those interest rates that they charge. If it's, a person that charges or a company that charges more than 18% interest, we'll have those listed on our website if they file that with us. And you can also go in and look at complaints that have been filed with us, get a little brief summary of, what that other consumer listed. It's not going to give you those personal information details about them specifically, but you'll be able to kind of see what may have happened in some of those other complaint situations. You can get a little background information, kind of make some of those decisions you might want to make if it's a business that you're not familiar with. We also do free presentations. So of course, some like this that are webinars and Zoom, things like that, but we also go across the state and we'll speak to churches, libraries, different community groups, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, things like that, or any other type of, civil group that you might have that's out there. And we do those, again, in person's free presentation we'll do. We have a variety of topics, everything from credit reports and scores, what they are, why they matter. We'll also do scam prevention with our Ditch the Pitch. We also have a Ditch the Pitch bingo. So we're playing bingo with folks and giving them those tips to avoid scams, maybe some cybersecurity information in there as well. So we have a variety of topics. You can find all of that on our website as well. We also do our best to get answers for you if you have any questions that come up. If it's something that we deal with directly, of course, we'll help you. But if it's something another state agency may be mandated by state law to handle, we'll kind of get you pointed in that right direction and get you on your way with that. And we have a live person who answers those phone calls as they come into our office. So you're not going to get those voice prompts telling you to press 1 for this, 2 for that. You'll get a live person who hopefully gets you pointed to where you need to go and help you get those answers to anything that might come up, and we'll do our best to get you kind of situated with that. All of our resources are at consumer.sc.gov. This How Do I button in the middle of the screen is kind of that best place to always start. And it'll give you access to a lot of those different resources that we mentioned, including the identity theft and scam reporting. So if you have any of those situations come up, that will How Do I button is the best place to go, and it'll get you right to those pages that you need to get those reports into us. And like I said, I'm kind of skipping my little About Us section there, but if you see that at the top of the page, you'll be able to learn a little bit more about our agency, how we work, and all that information as well, including some of the industries we regulate. So I kind of wanted to just start with identity theft and give you a little background information. If you've been on our presentations, you've heard us talk about a great deal of this before. But again, identity theft is when somebody's using your personal financial information, they're using it without your permission, and they're using it for some type of fraud. So they're probably doing things like opening up credit cards in your name. You might even be using some of your credit card, debit card information, those types of things as well. But a lot of times we kind of think of it as they're opening up those new credit cards, those new loans, they're putting it in your name. They're basically trying to hold you responsible for these actions that they're taking. Might even be stealing a tax refund. We hear about that a good bit from time to time, this time of year especially. So that's one of those reasons we always tell folks, file those tax returns, as quickly as you can. You want to get that information in before somebody else might file that tax purposes for you. We know they're not going to fill out the proper information and probably have the IRS knocking on your door wondering why your form was filled out completely wrong, and it's because somebody else did it. So just kind of keep that in mind. It's a good time to remember that and put those tax returns in as quickly as you can. Of course, here are some of our other instances of ways people can use your information. Might open up health insurance or use your health insurance to get medical care. Some cases may even pretend to be you if they're arrested, may have information about your driver's license number, some of your ID numbers, things like that. And they're trying to use that, again, making you responsible for their actions. So just a good reminder of all these different ways that people can use your information. So how does all this happen? The thing that I always tell people, a lot of times it's us. We give that information out to people. It might be a phone call you get, and somebody's asking you for a lot of personal details or a lot of financial information, and we're kind of sharing those details to them on the phone. These scams and these phone calls, things like that. A lot of times it's the things that let's see, somebody says they can hear the presentation, but they have a black screen. Let me see if we're sharing. I hope we're sharing. It does say you are screen sharing, so you should be able to see that. It does say it's got my screen number 2 on there, so you guys should be seeing my presentation. I hope that is the case for you, everybody. If you're not, please drop that in the chat and let me know. So do you see one person saying they're seeing the moderator, but they have a black screen? Somebody else just replied that they can see it. So hopefully you should be seeing everything properly. And again, apologize for stopping there, but I just wanted to make sure everybody could see. So if anybody else is having a problem seeing me or seeing the slides, please let me know. We'll kind of get that adjusted, but it may be just a one-person issue at this moment. Again, kind of apologize for stopping there. But again, identity theft, how it happens. I mentioned security breaches earlier. That is something that's reported to our agency a good bit. If there's a security breach that involves more than 1,000 South Carolina residents, those companies are required by law to report those breaches to us. So we get copies of those notices that they've sent out to consumers. We put that information on our website as well. And again, it's kind of one of those reminders that our information is out there. If you're getting those informations about security breaches, you want to go ahead and take steps to prevent identity theft. Just because you're getting that notice doesn't necessarily mean that identity theft has happened yet. Again, you're trying to make steps to prevent this before somebody else can use that information. So again, it's just kind of that big reminder, and I'll give you some of those tips at the end about how to protect yourself if you're getting those security breach notices. But again, all of this is just kind of a reminder about why it's so important to kind of protect our information and control what's out there about us. And I kind of want to get into now the identity theft reports reported to us. And again, this is calendar year 2025, so January 1st to December 31st. We've got 667 reports of identity theft that came through with our office. And you kind of look at some of those that are listed in there, and I've got my percentages, and I'll show you that in just a second. But the number one type of identity theft. And these are kind of the same three that we see this order every year generally. Financial identity theft is going to be by far the biggest one that's reported to our agency. And that's, of course, things like misuse of existing ATM, debit cards, credit cards, things like that. Might be somebody opening up those same types of cards or loans in somebody's name. Again, using that information for those financial accounts that they're trying to create, and again, hold you responsible for those actions that they're creating these fraudulent accounts and holding you responsible for it. Government identity theft is a category we use, and usually that's things like tax fraud, maybe disability services, public assistance, Social Security, unemployment benefits, those types of things. So anything involving those government services that you would generally use your information to get access to those things. So if you're being denied for any of these types of things, and you're kind of wondering why, you might need to go through your credit report. Hopefully they're giving you a little bit of background information about why maybe you're denied any of these types of services, but you can kind of go through your credit reports and see what's listed on there and see if there's any kind of red flags of identity theft that might kind of tip you off to why those things were denied as well. Medical identity theft, again, kind of self-explanatory. Is usually when somebody's using your information to kind of get medical services. Again, they're trying to get you to cover that bill for those services that they're providing, or they're receiving rather. So that would kind of be the case with that. Might be your health insurance, Medicare, anything like that. And we'll kind of give you the look at the percentages on that here as we get going. So with all those things that I just mentioned, you'll see the red with the financial identity theft. That's our things we just covered there a second ago. 403 of those reports involved financial identity theft. So that was about 60% of the reports that came in through our office last year. The next part on there was those government services. Again, 21% of those reports that came through us, about 145 the identity theft reports that came through us kind of fall into that category. And then those medical ones are much smaller category, just under 3%, which is 19 of those reports, about 667, if I'm recalling that number off the top of my head that we were talking about. And again, that's kind of the breakdown, our little pie chart there of how those 600 some odd reports broke down into those different categories there. Double check my little question box here because I thought I saw it flagging up, but hopefully things are all right for you guys. Again, identity theft losses, when we break these out, we usually break them out into potential losses and actual losses. So you'll see potential losses there, $1.182 million in potential losses. And that's money that somebody was able to get back. They're able to get that money credited to their accounts or put back into their accounts. So that's kind of why we consider that as potential losses. So it was something that somebody reported being stolen, then those funds were either refunded back to them, credited back to their accounts, whatever the case may be, but it was, able to get that money back. They're not being held responsible for it. But actual losses, kind of what we're interested in. Nearly $2.8 million in actual losses through identity theft. So that is money that consumers lost to those scams and identity theft situations. I shouldn't say scams because these are kind of broken out differently here. So this is $2.8 million to identity theft that consumers were not able to get back. They're being reported lost. And again, that's always money that I always tell folks we want that money to stay in South Carolina and to our residents. So that's $2.8 million that was kind of lost to those schemes that are out there, and those people were able to access that information for these consumers. We do look at kind of when people file reports with us, one of the things we always ask is age. So that's kind of how we're able to get this information. Some folks will, check the box not to disclose that information to us. So you'll see those listed on this as well. So you got 50 people who did not disclose that information. Identity theft is one of those things that impacts everybody, no matter what type of age you are. You'll see 35 to 44 is kind of the main or the largest number of people who are impacted for that. 25 to 34 is kind of that second group there, and then 45 to 54 is kind of that other one in there. People always ask me why that might be the case, why these people in that age range may be affected, and it could be a variety of reasons. A lot of times, once you're kind of in that middle range like that. Maybe you're submitting more applications for things. You're putting more details on the internet to try to apply for loans, that type of stuff. So your information may be being transmitted more often, something like that. That could be one of those reasons why. We don't really have it broken out in the why in this part of the thing. But the important thing to know is just criminals don't really care what your age is. If they can get access to that information one way or another, they're going to take advantage of it, right? So you kind of see everybody's kind of split up through there, and it's fairly evenly broken down once you kind of look at it. Not too big of a gap between the two, the age ranges there in those top couple of ones. So that's kind of important to look at. And again, looking at all these things, and we'll kind of give you a little bit of information here with our next slide of some of the ways that people, were able to recognize that they had these identity theft situations. The other category could be a variety of different things, and a lot of things that we do is we look into some of those other reports as they come in and try to figure out if they kind of bunch up into one thing. So we might look at that this year and say, hey, a lot of these were one very specific type of identity theft discovery method, and we might decide to break out a new category next year for it. So that's something we'll be kind of taking a look at. But kind of the big thing with this, if you look, the number one way that people reported that they discovered that to us was looking at their credit report. So that's kind of one of those things that we always focus on our presentations. If you've seen our presentations, we always talk about looking at your credit report regularly and double checking everything, making sure that everything actually belongs to you, that everything's accurate. And that's kind of that reason why. So you want to kind of get that tip off that something's going on, and you need to take steps to kind of fix that situation or report it to us or let us know that that's going on. So that's kind of one of those reasons why we focus on that. Bank notice may be another one of those. That's kind of that second one that's in there, those business notifications. Tax notice is down the list there. So 38 people learned about their identity theft situation that way. And a lot of times it is, maybe trying to put in that application to file your taxes, and you're notified, hey, your taxes have already been filed. That would kind of be that flag there that, something's going on. Somebody's already used your information to file that tax return. So that would kind of be that warning sign there. Government notification, of course, that might be, again, if you're applying for some type of service and it's flagged, maybe you're getting something in mail from a government benefit saying those benefits were already claimed. That would kind of be that situation there. We've got collection notice, 28 people, store credit card notification, credit monitoring, suspicious activity, and bank statements as well on there. And then you'll kind of see some of those as well that go in. And one of the notes that you will see, we had one person employer notification. There are cases where employers will look at kind of your credit report and your credit information and kind of ask you some of those details. Depending on what your job is and what's going on, they may be looking at a lot of that information. So that might be why that's tipped off in that situation. So again, just kind of take a look at that. Now, our report does look at county by county information with all of this. So we've got our little list here of our top counties that came in to us and the reports with those. So you'll see Greenville, number one kind of reporting county to us, 72 reports of identity theft in Greenville County. Richland County follows 69, Horry County 49. People always ask, why is that the case? You'll kind of notice, it follows population, right? So, some of our larger counties, of course, going to be the ones that have the larger number of people that file those reports. We also have an additional page on the actual report itself. If you downloaded that or if you look at it on our website, it's going to give you that kind of county by county look too, that will give you the per capita. So, some of our smaller counties may have, just a handful of people who've reported it. But when you look at it by per 1,000, residents, that percentage may be a little bit higher. So we also do have that information listed on our website as well. But again, a lot of times it's just, as you see Greenville, Richland, Horry, may just be, either awareness of our agency, or it may be, just the fact that there are larger numbers of populations in those areas. So that just kind of makes sense with that. Now we'll kind of get you a quick look. As I talk about all this, I always like to remind folks we do have that identity theft unit that, again, this is the toolkit that they sent out to everybody. We do have some very more specific ones, but you'll kind of see they kind of outline a lot of those steps different things you need to do, stop the damage, repair damage, correct errors that may be showing up on your credit reports, those types of things. So they kind of walk you through all those processes of things you need to do. One of the other things they do is kind of a little checklist. So it's got the type of identity theft that you've experienced. So if it was tax identity theft, or maybe it was government services, something like that, they're going to have that list of all the different agencies, different accounts, things like that you need to go through. And it's a little checklist that you can go through and fill in the boxes of who you've contacted and all that type of information. So that might be very helpful to you as well. And if you are an identity theft victim, I encourage you to go ahead and file those reports with our agency on our website, and then kind of get you in touch with that in our identity theft unit. Again, it is, a little bit tailored to whatever your situation is, the information they provide to you, and they're available to kind of help walk you through that process. So that's a good service. And again, it is free. Everything that we offer to folks is free here at Consumer Affairs. So just take advantage of those resources. Now we'll kind of get into the scams reported to our agency. So, year after year, I always tell people purchase scams are usually that number one thing that we see here at Department of Consumer Affairs. So you'll see that listed there. And again, that's usually those fake websites. Maybe you've ordered something online, it's fake goods that you get, or you just don't get anything at all. Could be a variety of those things, but it's kind of why we always kind of harp on some of these things you need to do to protect those online purchases that you're making. And it's just because those are typically the number one things that we have reported into our agency. You'll see service, repair, and debt collection on the list here. Those two categories flip-flopped from last year. They're the same top three, but the number two and number three kind of flip-flop from year to year on this year. But number two was that service and repair, and it could anything, fake credit repair company, maybe some kind of fake internet service that's being offered to you, those fake repair things that happen from time to time with folks as well. So those are on there. Debt collection scams are number three. So might be getting all those phone calls about a debt that isn't something that you actually owe money to. That's reported to us quite regularly, and there are steps you can take to kind of verify debts. Again, we're looking at your credit report is going to be a big thing, because if it's a legitimate debt, hopefully it's listed on those credit reports, and you'll see those listed on there and have all those details about how much you owe and those types of things. So again, credit reports are a big tool that can kind of help you even spot these types of scams that are out there. Kind of jumped over our numbers there for the year. We had 525 scams reported to our agency during the year, and that was down, I believe, about 200 or so from the year before. We know that scams are still out there, they're still hitting a lot of folks in our state. So, I wouldn't read too much in that number dropping. A lot of times people are just frustrated, don't report all these types of things, especially if they're involved in multiple agencies. Sometimes, folks are encouraged to contact the FBI, Federal Trade Commission, maybe some other federal agencies or law enforcement, depending on what's happening. So sometimes people just get frustrated and they stop reporting things. So depending on what's going on, some folks, by far do not report these things. And I know some of our sheriff's departments and things probably have some other numbers that are reported that aren't necessarily given to us too as well with that. So we know the percentage of scams reported across the state is probably a lot higher than what we're seeing. So we do want to just kind of encourage you again, if you're seeing the scams out there, you can report those to our agency and let us know about it, because it just kind of helps us know what's happening across the state. We've got a little breakdown here about the types of scams again. You'll notice these on enter up to 100. We do have a pie chart, listed on our website on the scams page that will give you, every type of scam that we have out there. But if you look at this chart, you'll kind of get the gist of those top three that we have on there. So in the blue, you've got our purchase scams. Those are about 12% this year, so 64 of the reports. Service and repair, again, those were a lot of those things might be fake credit repair company, might be, internet service repair, the repair person kind of thing that goes on from time to time. So those were 56 reports and about 10% of the reported scams at our agency last year. And then you've got the last one, debt collection, this year, 46%. And that was about, where I say 46 reports, and 8.76% of those that came into us. And when we look at the scam losses, again, we've got potential and actual. So when you look at the potential this year, almost $1 million. But again, that's money. With the scams, it's money that people did not actually lose. So if people are reporting it to us and they're saying, hey, I got this phone call about XYZ, but I did not give that person money, that's kind of where that goes into. So that's how we come up with that number. When you look at actual losses, $5.685 million. And again, that's the money that people actually lost to those scams. So, always tell folks, that's a lot of money that, we'd like to keep in our state. We want that money being spent here and people being able to use their money here in our state. And this is $5.685 million that's gone. You don't always know where that money ends up. Could be somewhere in the state, but it's probably gone over to somebody overseas, somebody to another country. We know a lot of times the FBI and those folks with the Federal Trade Commission, they tell us a lot of these scams are actually, being carried out by somebody in another country. So that's kind of, again, reason we'd want to be able to stop this and keep that money in our state and in the hands of our consumers here who can use it here for whatever reason they have. And when we look at the age range, you kind of see this list here. Again, we've got 134 people, the largest category in those older adults, 65 to 74. And then we have kind of the next range in there, 75 to 84, and then our 55 to 64, and it kind of goes down. Some years, we will have some of the younger population that kind of gets pushed in there a little bit higher, varies. One thing you will notice kind of 18 to 24-year-olds, 6 scams reported to our agency. I can tell you, we all know more than 6 people in that age group, in our state would have fallen victim to a scam last year. So, we just know that especially younger people aren't necessarily reporting scams. A lot of times they may be falling victims to scams just as much as some of our older residents, but those younger folks aren't reporting it. They maybe lost less money because, you think about it, older adults probably have more money saved up. They have more financial accounts. They have many different types of accounts that they've kind of accumulated over their lifetime. Then those younger folks probably don't have this much money on hand. So they may be losing $20 or $50, something like that. They just kind of assume it's not worth their time and effort to go ahead and report those scams. So that's kind of why we believe some of these younger populations are kind of underreported on that type of situation. And again, we've got the undisclosed listed there, and that's just simply folks who decided not to click a box when they were filling out their report and didn't provide that age. So that happens quite a bit, and always encourage folks if you can. I know sometimes with some websites, I don't want to disclose my age, so I understand that situation. But, again, that always kind of helps us kind of understand who's being targeted by scams and how scammers are going after folks. So whenever you're reporting these, I would encourage you to provide that age for us, and it just kind of helps us kind of understand what's happening in our state. The scammer contact method by far, phone was kind of the #1 type of scam that was, or, method of contact that the scammers were using when we were getting those reports. Last year, 254 of them involved phone calls. So that's about 60% of the people who, reported scams to us, majority of those going through the phone. Then you'll see internet. So again, a lot of times it's those fake websites, things like that. Text message, 63 is what we have listed there. And again, a lot of us are getting those scam text messages, maybe not reporting them. So that would kind of be the case with that too. The number that stood out with me on this was, of course, social media, with just 2 people who reported contact by social media for their scam. And, I know I've probably seen a lot more than just 2 scams out there, just myself, on social media. So again, especially if you're falling victim to these scams, please report them to us and provide that information about kind of how it's being brought in, those types of stuff, and how those scammers are contacting you. But we know those phone calls, kind of that #1 method. And again, it's always important why we talk about just not answering those phone calls you don't recognize, being aware of, all those different kind of methods that scammers have if they're changing their caller ID to spoof it and look like another phone number, those types of things. Always just kind of be mindful of all those phone calls that you're coming in there. And if you can't verify it's actually the person that you're dealing with on the phone, don't provide them information or money. To get into a little bit here on the counties. And again, it's kind of the same situation we had a minute ago. You'll see the same 3 that we had with identity theft. You'll see those listed with our scam reports as far as the top counties that came through there. But again, we have that information on our website of per capita involving each county, and you can kind of look at that as well. If you've downloaded the full report, you'll see Richland County 68, Horry had 51, and Greenville 47. And again, a lot of that's just kind of kind of because they're the larger counties, a lot of population, especially Richland County. I would say, we have probably a lot more presence. People know about us a good bit in Richland County since we are actually based here. So that might be one reason with that. We're in Greenville and Horry County a good bit as well. So, again, some of it may be awareness about the agency. Some of it may be just because populations up in those counties or in those parts of the state. So that might be kind of some of the reasoning for some of that. And I always like to provide a little bit of information about kind of some of these things to spot scams. And I've probably said a few of these little details as we've mentioned them, but I always encourage folks just kind of keep an open mind about how scammers communicate and how they reach out to us. If there's a communication method that we use, scammers are on there as well, especially, as I mentioned, phones, that number one thing, but they're also sending lots of text messages. If you're like me, you get probably a couple a week that have some kind of text message that looks a little iffy. So, always kind of take a look at those, make sure you're not just giving your money, your personal information to those communications that come in. If you can't absolutely verify that it is the person that, they're claiming to be, you don't want to give that information over. And you always want to double check all those things. So if you're getting something that claims to be from your bank, you might want to look at that back of your credit card, get that phone number that you have on there, contact the bank that way, maybe go into their app. If you're like me, you probably use that app at least once a week doing something else. Just go ahead and open up the app, and most of them have a communications method there where you can send them that secure message and ask, was that you guys sending me this message about my bank account, whatever the case may be. Utilities also have good customer support that you can look up those customer support numbers on your bills. So there's always a way to kind of double check that information the scammer's giving you, and you don't want to just use the details that they're providing you. We tell folks, there's all these scams out there, and these scammers are changing their methods all the time. They're changing their stories. And once you kind of figure out one trick, they've moved on to something else. So we kind of just like to encourage you to think about the red flags. If you've seen our presentations, I know you've heard this, but it's always just kind of that good refresher to hear it again. We have those common signs that we know each scam kind of follows. A lot of these patterns, you can usually point out some of these things with just about every type of scam that's out there. The big things that, they pretend to be somebody somebody you recognize. Sometimes that may be a company, like I said, a bank account. They may be using information from a security breach to target you specifically. They know what bank you've used because of that breach. So they're sending that information. They're pretending to be, that company that that company that you trust. You recognize that name because you use them, every week or whatever the case may be. Sometimes it's a person that they pretend to be. Just kind of varies from time to time, but they're always using, names, company names, those types of things, but they want to get your trust. So they use those names that you recognize. And then they're going to tell you there's either a problem or a prize. They do that to get us kind of worked up. If you think you're going to get some free money, get that tax return refund. We see that a good bit here in the next month or so. I'm sure those will pick up. We're starting to get those text messages saying, you've got extra money that's going to be credited back to your account. So we all get excited about free money or free things. So you might be kind of inclined to click on that message, or at least open it up and read it and see what it says, and you might then kind of think about clicking in that link to see if you actually have that refund coming to you. And it kind of works the same way with the problem. You get worked up. You think maybe there's a bill that you didn't pay, or, maybe I've got this $500 charge that's going to go through my credit card if I don't respond to this message right now. So whatever the case may be, they kind of get those emotions getting worked up, and they get us excited about, either a problem or a prize. And then they know we kind of probably aren't thinking clearly. If our emotions are going, we kind of get worked up about whatever's, going wrong with, that situation. And then they're going to tell us we've got to act now or else. So they put on that pressure and make you think that you have to do some type of action immediately, or, something's going to happen to you. So just kind of be cautious anytime somebody's telling you, act now. That's always kind of one of those red flags with that. And if they're pressuring you to make those decisions right away, just always kind of step back and think about it for a minute, especially if they're pretending to be a bank account or, a utility or anything like that. They're not just going to turn your service off overnight. There's steps that those utilities always have to take. So those processes are usually in place, and they usually take a while for, all these types of things. So you can always take a step back, at least take a few hours to think about it. You usually don't have to act right away. So that's kind of that thing that scammers do. And of course they do that. So you're making those bad decisions. You don't have time to think it through. and you don't have time to talk about it because they know if you start talking to somebody else, you're probably going to realize something's not quite right with that situation. They don't want you to get to that point, so they're going to make you think that you've got to act now or this bad thing's going to happen to you. Then a lot of times scammers tell us to pay in specific ways. And most of the time that's cryptocurrency, gift cards, prepaid debit cards, might even be some transfers on bank apps, things like that with our phones. So, those processes are easy. Sometimes it can be very difficult to get back. Some cases you can't get the money back, especially with cryptocurrency. A lot of times once you send those funds over to somebody, it's gone. It's just as good as, handing them a pile of cash. They're able to take it and move on, with it. And it can be very, very difficult to get that money back. So that's kind of why they like those types of payments. So we really encourage you to think about that anytime somebody's telling you, especially if it's an unusual way of paying. I kind of like those utility examples because I pay my utility bill the same way every month. If I suddenly got a call from my utility, my electric company telling me I had to pay with the prepaid debit card this month, it would be a little bit unusual. I don't pay that way every month. So just kind of think about those situations whenever you're getting those phone calls or those messages. And if it's unusual and it's something, out of the norm, that's kind of that red flag with that, especially, again, if it's cryptocurrency. I'd say, there's not government agencies and there's not any banks that I know of that are accepting all these payments in cryptocurrency and things like that. So if they're telling you you have to pay with cryptocurrency, especially, that's kind of that big red flag with that. You need to take a step back and at least take some time to evaluate the situation. I've got my little roadmap to avoid scams, and again, phone calls that number one way of communication from scammers in 2025. So wanted to make sure I stress, don't answer those phone calls, respond to those text messages from numbers you don't know. You can use those block features on your phone. A lot of phones also offer a lot of those, call blocking features, things like that. They'll have some of the different apps that you can use to get some of those robocalls and things out of your system when they're coming in. A lot of them have a really good features where you can just slide it, do the block and report, and that's just going to tell your phone carrier that, that person's bad actor if they're doing things that they don't need to do. And those phone carriers need to look at, that phone number a little bit closer and hopefully can take some steps to avoid it. But you don't want to answer those phone calls. Don't respond to those messages if you don't recognize the number. That would be kind of that big first step to take. And of course, you don't want to give that personal financial information over to requests that you didn't expect. So again, if you're getting those phone calls, those messages about, something going wrong with your bank account, anything like that, you don't want to just verify all that information. There's usually legitimate steps. I know my bank usually sends those messages through the app. I'll get a message maybe in my email or a text message that says, we've sent you a secure message, log into your account to view it. That's how my bank works. So, just kind of know those normal processes for those companies you deal with. And, if you can't verify everything that's in those claims, don't give them that personal or financial information. Don't fall for those high pressure tactics. Again, they're wanting you to make those decisions right away, pay them, giving them those personal details right away. That's just kind of one of those big red flags. Again, they're trying to turn on that pressure, make you think something bad is going to happen if you don't make this decision right now. Again, that's just generally not the way most companies and most things work. You usually have a little bit of time, even if, it is a court case or something like that. You've got to notice for it. They're not going to tell you, you've got to be in court in 2 hours. You got to be in court tomorrow. There's a process that these things usually take, and it usually takes a good bit of time. So, usually you've got a good bit of time to make those decisions. You don't have to make them right away. So don't fall for those high pressure tactics that scammers like to use. And again, know those forms of payment, gift cards, prepaid debit cards, cryptocurrency, wire transfers. Cryptocurrency ATMs are a big thing right now where, scammer will tell you you've got to go to a cryptocurrency ATM that might even be, a mile down the street from your house. They know where you live. They're going to tell you to go to that very specific ATM and send them that cryptocurrency information. So you're putting your money in there, getting those cryptocurrency accounts created, and then you're sending them those details of how to use that information or how to get those funds. So just kind of beware of anything like that and really know that those scammers love those types of payments. So anytime you're getting requests for gift cards, specifically gift cards, cryptocurrency, wire transfers, those money apps, those might be kind of those signs that something's not quite right. And I always like to say, talk to somebody before you take an action. A lot of times just saying these things out loud when you're discussing it, you kind of realize it yourself, what's going on. You're like, but that's not right. I've had plenty of situations with my own, accounts and things like that, where, get a text message and I say it to whoever's in the room with me. Hey, I just got this message about whatever, and then as you kind of say it out loud, you kind of realize, well, that's weird. That's not right. So, really encourage folks, talk to somebody you trust, especially before you take any kind of action, provide information or, financial account details or funds, anything like that. So just kind of talking to somebody that you trust will kind of help you prevent a lot of different types of scams that are out there and really help protect you and those around you that you're having those conversations with. And as we get kind of wrapping up, I do like to mention our free tools to protect yourself. And hopefully all your financial accounts are requiring you to put multi-factor authentication or two-factor authentication on them. So you're getting that text message with, the PIN number or the code that you have to enter before you get into your account, or maybe you have to hold up your face and do the face scan before you can sign in. All those things are kind of set up to better protect your accounts. And we would encourage you to set them up wherever you can, especially social media. We get a lot of calls, people having their social media accounts hacked. Having that two-factor authentication on it can take a big step to preventing that from happening. So even if those hackers get those passwords, they're not able to get into that account because they don't have the face scan or they don't have that text message with that code in it, whatever the case may be. So just kind of find something that you're comfortable with, take advantage of it. And, the FBI tells us that it's the thing we can all do that kind of doubles up your security with that. So you're kind of protecting yourself twice as much by putting these things in place. So you're kind of preventing these hackers from getting in, even if they have access to those passwords. So that's a great tool you can do, and also set up all the account alerts that your banks and credit card companies may have. I've got some set up on my cards where, maybe you're doing a purchase and suddenly you get a text message that tells you, hey, $50 was charged to this company. Some of the accounts will have different things on there too that you can kind of go in and personalize. So just take a look at what your credit cards and your debit cards offer and see what kind of works with your lifestyle. Some of these is this you alerts are helpful too. So if somebody's tried to sign into an account, it will kind of notify you that somebody's signing in from a device in whatever city. Those are helpful. And sometimes they'll even send you notices if there's been, changes to your credit report, something like that. So that might be something you want to take a look at, see what your bank and your credit card companies offer, and they can be kind of great tools to take advantage of. And again, they're free. Just got a little bit of information here just about calls and text messages. I wanted to make sure I included this today since we know those phone calls are kind of that number one way that people are getting scammed. So again, don't answer those unknown numbers. We know that, of course, spoofing happens a good bit too. So you always want to verify all those different things as you're getting these phone calls and make sure it really is that person. The do not call registry, I know a lot of folks kind of say it doesn't work, but the big thing with it is if you sign up for it, and then you're starting to get all these, unwanted calls from different companies and different robocalls and all these different types of things, you kind of automatically know that they're either, ignoring that you're on the wall, which could kind of make them maybe a company you don't want to deal with, or, they're a scammer. So it's kind of those people who are either breaking the wall or people who are kind of ignoring the wall, and you kind of know, maybe I don't want to do business with this person who's calling me randomly. And of course, there are exceptions to the do not call registry where if you've given them your phone number, they are able to call you and things like that. So that kind of goes down another rabbit hole that we won't get into in this presentation, but we do have that information on our YouTube site. And if you're interested in that, you can go find that webinar on our YouTube. But as I mentioned, there are call blocking resources. The Federal Communications Commission has a good bit of info on their website, and I'll kind of show you that on the next slide here. But you can kind of see what your phone providers offer. A lot of our phones actually have a lot of these things built into them. So take advantage of any of those things that are built in. And I will say, I have two different phones, my work phone and my cell phone. My work phone is a much newer model of, the iPhone, and it has a lot more protections on it that my personal phone doesn't have. So I even noticed those differences with those two phones that are, almost the same. So really, just kind of take a look at what's offered on your specific phone and take advantage of that. Again, I'll show you some more info on that here in just one second. But again, report those junk calls, those text messages, do that little swipe that it says, report and delete. And that, again, is going to make your phone provider take a closer look at those numbers and see kind of what's going on. And I've kind of mentioned some of this, but I do want to show you that link there, that fcc.gov/call-blocking. And that's a great tool. And they have it kind of listed out where they have very specific phone providers. So if you're AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, any of our local companies that are out there that, maybe just landline offerings, they have all those listed on there and some of the services that may be provided by those companies. So if you're getting a ton of phone calls that come in through your landline, especially, you can kind of go to that website, take a look at all the details of what those providers might be able to offer you. And you can always call those phone companies too. Say, hey, I get lots of, junk calls. What can I do? What can you offer me that will help prevent this? Some services will cost you money. So it's kind of why I'm not going to get into a lot of those. But, if that is an issue and you're willing to pay for that, that might be something that you want to look into. And as I get wrapping up, I want to make sure I mention the annualcreditreport.com. That's going to give you access to all your credit reports for you, the three major credit bureaus, I should say. There are a lot of other ones that may be out there, but you can go to annualcreditreport.com. That's going to give you access to Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax, and you can get access to those credit reports once a week now for free. You want to go through those regularly. You don't want to go in necessarily once a week. I'd probably drive you crazy. I always laugh about that. But you want to go in at least once a year, a couple times a year, look at everything. Again, make sure everything's accurate. Make sure it actually belongs to you. If you're seeing addresses and phone numbers and things like that that you don't recognize, that might be a sign that somebody's used those details to put in applications in your name for credit or something like that. Again, if you're seeing a list of loans that you don't recognize, that would be that big kind of warning sign that somebody's created those accounts in your name. So take a look at that, make sure everything actually belongs to you, make sure everything's accurate and it's up to date. And we always recommend annualcreditreport.com because it is authorized by federal law. So it's kind of set up the rules and parameters of how they're using your information. We know there are some fake websites maybe out there that were kind of stealing information about you. So just kind of beware of that. And again, annualcreditreport.com is the site that we recommend because it's authorized by federal law. And if you're seeing signs of identity theft, you can put a fraud alert in place for free. That's going to last a year. You can extend it to 7 years if those things are out there that you're still concerned about. And you're basically just notifying businesses that something's going on. They need to take a closer step and make sure that it actually is you applying for all of those loans or those accounts that are coming through. So if you're opening up a credit card, they might ask for, additional types of identity verification, things like that from you. So you call you call Experian, TransUnion, Equifax. Sorry about that. You notify one of the three major credit bureaus, and they're going to notify the other two that they need to put this fraud alert in place. So that's kind of why we have the one call. That's all in there. So you're just notifying Experian, TransUnion, or Equifax. They're contacting the other two, and that's going to put that fraud alert in place for all three for you. The security freeze is, again, a free tool to take advantage of, and it's free to place, it's free to lift. You're basically stopping other people from having that access to your credit report. So if you're not actively out looking for new loans, new lines of credit, new credit cards, things like that, it's a great tool to go ahead and put in place. And then whenever you need to open up those accounts, you can lift that freeze and put those applications in, and it basically will allow you to use it at that point. You do have to contact all three of the major credit bureaus, so Experian, TransUnion, Equifax, let them know that you want to put that freeze in place. You can go to their website or you can give them a phone call and they'll have that put in place. If you're doing it online, they'll have it in place for you within an hour. So that's a great tool you can do. Again, put it in place, the freeze, and it's going to stop somebody else from using your information to open those accounts. Will also stop you from opening those accounts as well. So if you're looking to put in a car application, something like that, get a new car loan, or, maybe even open up a new utility account. I had that happen to me when I was trying to get a new internet provider. Forgot that I had my freeze in place, or just didn't really think about them running the credit report for that process. And, I was notified, hey, we can't give you this service right now because you have a security freeze. So it did what it was supposed to do. It stopped that application from being able to go through. Had to go in, lift it for that time period. I went back an hour later, put that application back in after the freeze was lifted. and was able to get that service. So that, in that situation did what it was supposed to do. And it's a great tool you can take advantage of. You just need to make sure you're putting that freeze in place whenever you're not putting in all those applications. And again, it's going to stop other people from doing that. And if your information's out there in a security breach, I'd highly encourage you to do this. It's one of the best things you can do. Again, it's going to stop other people from using those details and making you a victim of identity theft. So just because they have that information, they're not going to be able to use it if you have that security freeze in place. And again, if you think you're a victim of identity theft or scam, please call us. You can go to our website, consumer.sc.gov. Again, that little How Do I button is going to give you that access to being able to file that report or that identity theft claim with us. And it'll give you all those tools. Again, our identity theft unit can kind of walk you through a lot of that and kind of let you know what's going on with those accounts you might need to contact. And I do want to show you this real quick, and I'm going to put the slides and the report itself back into the chat here in 2 seconds. But if you click on the news tab at the beginning of the page or the top of the page there, that's going to give you access to that reports tab. So you should see news circled there, and then just to the right, you'll see reports in blue. That's kind of where a lot of our different reports are listed. So you'll see some of those in there on that page. But if you look down, 3 down, identity theft and scams reports, and we've got the 2026 report at the top of that list for you. And if you've downloaded the slides, even you can just click this page and it'll take you right to it. But again, I'll also put the entire report in there for you as well. I always like to mention that we do have free publications for anybody who needs them. So our Ditch the Pitch is a great tool to take advantage of, and that's our scam prevention guide. We also have an identity theft prevention guide as well that would be something that you can look at that would give you some of these other additional tips to avoid identity theft and scams. And our credit reports guide is also pretty good to look at as well. So if you don't know quite much of what to look for when you're going through those credit reports, it's got a lot of information and actually has a little checklist on the last 2 or 3 pages that kind of gives you an outline of, did I check this? Did I check this? So that would be a great resource for you as well if you're not too familiar with those credit reports. And as we wrap up, I want to mention a couple of upcoming events. Our webinars are coming up in March. We've got our cryptocurrency scams presentation that's going to be next Wednesday at 10:30 a.m. Our HOAs and the law presentation is one that I know a lot of folks always attend. So one of our attorneys will be leading that presentation and give you a little bit of information just about various homeowner association laws in our state and kind of how that process works with us. And then on Wednesday, March 18th, I'll be giving the My Information Was Breached, What Now? So we'll kind of be looking at some of those security breaches and again, kind of looking at those things you can do to protect your information, such as changing all your passwords and things like that. If you know those accounts were breached, go in immediately and change the password. Hopefully those companies, if you're affected by a breach and they're sending you that notification, usually they'll make you change that password the next time you try to sign in. But if you even think that's the case, you're seeing news reports out there of a potential breach at a company, go ahead and go to that website for that company if you have an account with them and change those passwords and things. That's always a good reminder for that information. And we do have free shred events throughout March that we'll be hosting all over the state. Our first one's going to be March 9th here in Columbia at Shandon Baptist Church, and then we'll be in Myrtle Beach on March 11th, North Charleston on the 17th, and in Furman University in Greenville on March 31st. So that's going to be in March. And again, you can go to our website. We've got the little shred events page that you can go to as well to get all those details. And all of those events are 11 a.m. to 2 p.m., 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. And I do see a couple of questions. I'm going to try to get wrapping up here for you folks to let you get to those, but I do want to let you know that our YouTube channel especially has a lot of our webinars and presentations on them. So if you've missed information or missed a presentation, most of the times we were able to get those on our YouTube and you can take a look at those. And of course, we always put scam and identity theft information on our Facebook and X accounts as well. Somebody asked, do you collect information on the identity of persons committing the identity theft, who they were, where they located, were they caught and prosecuted? That's not information that we readily have available. I'm not sure if the Federal Trade Commission is able to get those details in their database either that they maintain. And a lot of times as people are coming to us with these reports, they're just kind of experiencing it on the front end too, or they're just discovering it, right? So probably hasn't gone through that investigative process yet. A lot of times when people come to us with identity theft, especially with identity theft, they're just kind of discovering that process and they're wanting to know that information of what do I need to do to, protect these accounts and that type of stuff. So that's kind of that start of the process. So a lot of times when they're coming to us, we're getting that information, telling them to, the steps they might need to take to prevent, further damage. But then sometimes it's also, especially with scams too, it's kind of that here's what's happened. You might also need to contact this law enforcement agency. A lot of times I have to point out our viewers and people who attend our webinars, we are not a law enforcement agency with that capacity. So, a lot of times it may be the scam happened and you need to go through the FBI. They have an internet crime complaint center that handles a lot of the, especially purchase scam type things. If it's one particular website that's targeting folks, you might have to go to that is ic3.gov. So it's the letter I and then c3.gov. You would go to that website, notify the FBI that this crime has happened. Sometimes, depending on what it is, it may be your local sheriff's department or your local police department may be the one who can kind of help you out with that. So sometimes even based on the type of scam or the type of scheme that's involved, it might be a different type of law enforcement agency. So I hope that's making sense. But a lot of times we're kind of helping connect those people or kind of letting them know which law enforcement agency they need to get in touch to with as well, so they can file those reports and hopefully have an investigation started. Especially with some of the internet crimes, it can be hard to get those investigations going. So sometimes it's even why that's important to report those scams you didn't fall through. So if you're reporting those scams to the FBI, these websites are targeting folks. Hopefully that can kind of tip them off after they receive so many complaints. They can kind of start to take a look at that. So that would be kind of a situation with that. Somebody asked, do you receive scam reports from local sheriff's offices if they're reported there? The answer may depend on that sheriff's office. Some sheriff's offices, will refer people to us and they kind of send them our way and have that person file that complaint. That is something they have to send to us individually. So those police departments aren't sending those reports to us automatically, that individual. So the scam victim or the identity theft victim would have to come to us and kind of fill out that information. So again, that's kind of one of those steps of, maybe why sometimes, people don't continue to report things. They're like, well, I've already reported it with police or I've reported it with the sheriff's department. Why am I also reporting with another agency? So that is kind of important to point out. One thing that I do like to point out is we do share some of those details with the Federal Trade Commission, who has kind of a larger database with federal law enforcement agencies and different types of agencies like that across the country. So that information is kind of shared with them with, hey, this are the type of scams being reported in South Carolina, and they kind of can use that to compare what's happening in other places in the country and look at some of those, again, those same repeat things. If it's the same website being involved or whatever the case may be, or the same type of scam. So if it's the same debt collection calls that are happening over and over in one place, they can look at it and say, hey, this is also happening across the state or across the country rather, and we need, federal law enforcement to look at where these calls are coming from and how that's involved. So sometimes that's how that comes in there. And I know I'm going to type in, I want to just make sure I type in the ic3.gov website in there, just so I know you folks can see that. A lot of times, like I said, some of those scams will be encouraged to be reported there if it involves internet type websites and things like that. So sometimes we send folks there as well. And sometimes they just have a lot of good information on that website as well. Sometimes they'll put tips about different things that are going on that they see. Somebody else asked, does the FBI report to you when they receive reports from SC residents? Not generally. We will kind of hear from them from time to time on some stuff. And we have some folks with their office here in Columbia that are fantastic that we chat with quite regularly about different types of things. So they will kind of notice, let us know whenever they're seeing repeat things, if it's those, phone calls about a particular issue or those text messages about a particular issue. They are kind of good about that, and they have that kind of working relationship with us. But sometimes it's, I don't want to say a little more informal, but sometimes it may be, more of those conversations than actual filing of reports. Kind of Federal Trade Commission is that big one that we work with, especially identity theft situations. A lot of times people will file those identity theft reports with the Federal Trade Commission, and they kind of share that information to us as well. So they'll let us know. And then we send notices to those folks that, hey, Federal Trade Commission notified us that you may be an identity theft victim. And then we kind of provide them resources and some things as well. Some of that information, I believe, may not quite be included in this report because we're not 100% certain if they are, in fact, identity theft victims. So sometimes it's that initial reach out, if that makes sense. So the Federal Trade Commission kind of tells us these folks had a situation that may have put them at risk of identity theft, and we kind of provide additional resources and give them access to some of our information, and then they can file that report again with us. So that would kind of be one of those ways that that information is shared. And if you need any of the details in our slides or the report itself or anything else that's come up and you have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email. That's my email there on the screen and my direct number. I'm happy to answer anything that I can. And also always point out the public information emails that you probably got the notification about the webinar on those, or Wednesday webinars. If you get those emails, if you hit reply on those will come directly to me so I can reply back to those as well. So if you're not able to write down my email address, you can just hit reply to those public information emails and those come to me. And my information is also on our website as well. So if you go to consumer.sc.gov, you'll find all my details on there, my phone number, email address, and all that too. And I appreciate you guys for joining us. And I'm going to just wrap things up, and we hope to see you again at another Wednesday webinar. Thank you very much.